So without further ado, we're going to move into the highlight of our day, which is a fireside chat with Ray Lane. Our tradition is to have our students introduce our speaker and also do the interviewing. So that's what we're going to have today. I'm going to introduce you to Coleman Isner, who will take it from here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining this exciting fireside chat with Ray Lane today. I'm excited to introduce him before we lead into the actual Q&A portion of it with Roshni. So, like many Swartz Center and CMU contributors, Ray is from Western Pennsylvania. He attended Moon Area High School, which is just outside of Pittsburgh, and his dad and son are both alumni of CMU, so the Tartan pride runs very deep. But Ray himself has contributed greatly to our university as well, serving on Carnegie Mellon's Board of Trustees since 1996, and he was the chairman of the board from 2009 to 2015. In 2010, he generously funded the creation of the Lane Center for Computational Biology, which is the forerunner to the current computational biology department. And he is honored by the Lane Center for Computational Cancer Research and the Lane Fellows Program, which supports scientists of outstanding intellect at the intersection between computation and biology in their pursuit of postdoctoral research. Outside of CMU, Ray is a technology executive and venture capitalist, best known for leading the go-to-market overhaul of the Oracle Corporation in the 1990s. As Oracle's president and CEO, Ray reestablished the company's leadership in the database market and grew Oracle's market cap by 114 times to over $200 billion. After leaving Oracle, Ray became a managing partner with Kleiner Perkins, as Dave mentioned earlier, one of the premier venture capital firms. And he worked there for 14 years before becoming partner emeritus. And early in his career, Ray was senior partner of a consulting firm, Booz Allen Hamilton, and a division vice president with Electronic Data Systems Corporation. Ray also serves on the boards of Special Olympics International and Hewlett-Packard, of which he was executive chairman from 2011 to 2013. Currently, Ray is a managing partner at GreatPoint Ventures, an early-stage venture capital firm founded by entrepreneurs and company builders. GreatPoint Ventures has invested in many bold companies across many industries that you all have indicated a lot of interest in throughout the day, including food innovation, healthcare, robotics, finance, and general software systems. Many of their portfolio companies, such as Beyond Meat, Kinetica, and Hero, have redefined the industries that they operate within. So with that, we are lucky to have Ray join us for this discussion, and I would appreciate it if everyone could please join me in a round of applause welcoming Ray to the 2023 Swartz Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ray and Roshni.
Turn it on.
Is it on now? There we go. Well, welcome back to campus, and we are so incredibly honored to have you here today at the Swartz Bootcamp. Like Coleman mentioned, you've worked at a variety of different companies, including big tech and startup like IBM, Booz Allen, Oracle, as well as mentoring so many startups. So what are some differences between big tech and startups that we as students might not know or might not be aware of?
Well, first, before I answer that question, I want to explain that I married a daughter last weekend. I didn't marry her; I married her off, and I got COVID. So I had it. I had first symptoms Monday, Tuesday. I went on Paxlovid. I conquered it. I've been now negative for 2 days. But that's the reason for my voice, and the voice is I'm going to drink a lot of water, and I love to talk, so my voice hopefully will last through this. I don't believe in apologies, so I'm not going to apologize. It's just that I want to explain that the voice will be rough. Okay. True. I have worked at a lot of large companies, IBM, EDS, Oracle, Booz Allen, and I have started one company as an entrepreneur, but mostly have funded small companies. And so I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs, probably over 100 entrepreneurs kind of do their thing. I don't think I've seen two that are the same. So everybody kind of has their same. We venture capitalists try to kind of pattern match and categorize and say an entrepreneur is kind of a good communicator, a good visionary, good. I I think it's very, very hard to kind of say there's a category that you fit into as an entrepreneur that is going to assure that you are a winner. You know, I have to say that big companies and small companies, this may surprise you, I think there's a lot of similarities. I actually, the way, when I was fortunate enough to run a large company, I saw it as a small company because I really ran a team of people and trusted those people to run the scale. So when I started at Oracle, there's about 7,000 people already, and the company was doing about $700,000 or $800,000 million in business. And we scaled it to over 40,000 people and $200 million market cap. I mean, but it always felt small to me that those 10 or 15 people that I counted on were really the people that I worked with. Now, there was one difference. That I drove Ellison, who was the CEO, I drove him crazy because I spent 70% of my time at the coalface. He didn't really understand that was something that was really, really important, but he actually did the same thing. He doesn't understand. He taught me that. So I ended up spending a lot of time with salespeople, with engineers, with consultants, and really testing what direction I set at the beginning. And if you don't do that, it's like that little, kind of elementary school game of you tell somebody, if I tell you something and you pass it around the room, it's not going to come out the same way when Coleman tells me what I said. And the same thing happens in a large company, is that, if you're, especially in a tech company, if you're making up strategy on Monday, and say, what we ought to be doing is this, what we ought to be doing that. We have ideas at the management committee, executive committee on Monday. We expect some sales guy in the southern part of Italy to keep up and to understand that the strategy has changed or the direction has changed. So running a large company, it feels at the top when you set the direction, when you manage the team, when you kind of go to offsites, it feels like a small company. But someone has to be responsible for scale. Somebody has to say, okay, like I brought a guy from Booz Allen with me and put him in charge of consulting. We had a couple hundred consultants, database consultants at Oracle. And he said, I think I could scale this thing to over 1,000 people. He scaled it to 18,000 people in a $3 billion business. It began, when we started the business applications part of Oracle, and then we started grew the consulting part of it, we didn't understand that we could take it that far. So we had to hire people that were different. In Europe, there were presidents of countries. So president of Oracle UK, president of Oracle France, president. My hope was that we could actually build a global business, that we could take sales, we could take consulting, we could take support, and we could actually build those as worldwide functions and use common practices as we go to market. It was impossible to change the mindset of the president of Oracle France, who had his own logo. Everybody knows that Oracle is kind of red letters, right? And he had his Oracle was blue with a little flag on the top of it. Now, I was hopeful to change him, but it wouldn't. So we ended up bringing in someone from, I think Digital Equipment Corporation, brought him in. He understood how to scale a company, how to scale Europe, how to run Europe as one. So I think there's a lot of similarities when you think of your teams. So if I thought of my team as 10 or 15 people, and each of them thought of their team as 10 or 15 people, they can actually, there are a lot of similarities with a small company. But big companies inevitably are bureaucracies. Inevitably, they are bureaucratic, they are political. People naturally, just people's characteristics are naturally to say, I want to be competitive, and sometimes that competition turns inward. And big companies just have to be careful that they can, refresh themselves and really, focus on that problem. I've seen small companies, I've seen startups get the same cancer. Maybe they become politicized, maybe they become a bit bureaucratic, and in a small company, it's just dangerous. I think the biggest difference in the two is that large companies rarely have to worry about capital as much as small companies do. Capital is oxygen. In the startup world, if you run out of capital, and we're in a market right now where capital is very hard to come by, and so if you run out of capital, nothing good happens. Okay, your company could go out of business. You could certainly shrink in terms of valuation. You're laying off your team. And we've seen a lot of that over the last year, because we had over a decade of a bull market and free capital where companies that really, if you take it over a 50-year history and say, okay, what company has a right to win or a right to exist and has a real value proposition, customer, there are a lot of companies out there that got funded in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021 that just shouldn't exist. They just didn't have a right to exist, but they got capital. Money was free. Money is no longer free. Capital is very hard to come by. So that's really the major difference between the two. But if you can have a mental set in a startup that is, kind of one team, as you scale, have each of those team members think the same way, that they have to build a small team and scale. And so think about it as a hierarchy that you're just building, and they have a small team attitude but can build scale at the same time. Inevitably, you have to change people. There's no way to avoid it. If you look at, I don't know what the percentage would be, Chris, Dave, maybe, what percentage of, say, billion-dollar companies today are run by their founder? Would you say it's like less than 2%, 1%? Yeah, really, really small number. And so the founder that recognizes that right up front and say, I'm really good at starting a company, I will get it off the ground, I will get the valuation at a certain point, I will get a lot of customers on board. And then, and my favorite example is Scott Cook from Intuit. Scott Cook understood he wasn't the best CEO. He hired Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell's now become a legend, grew up in Pittsburgh. Bill Campbell became the CEO of Intuit and made it what it is today. He scaled it. Scott is still the chairman of the board. Okay, so you can't, fight that. Okay, as I said, I like to talk. When you ask a small question, I give you a big answer. So, but go ahead.
Nope. You've mentioned that you took Oracle from 7,000 employees to 40,000, 2 billion market cap to 236 billion. So what steps did you take to increase that growth and to make that growth?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. So I think, well, first of all, when I came to Oracle, I was a partner at Booz Allen. I had been there 12 years. My plan was to be the managing partner of Booz Allen Hamilton. That was my plan. And I think there was only one or two people that I would compete for that position. And so I thought I was running about a fourth of the firm, primarily in technology. And so I thought that was going to be my pathway. And I really loved that business. And then I got the call from Oracle. And really, really, thought it through and just kind of said, this company could be a lot more than it is today. It was in 1992, from 1986 when it went public to 1991, it was doubling every year. It was the hottest company in Silicon Valley. Then it hit a wall because it hadn't built the scalable processes to do business. Every salesperson was allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. They could go out and talk to a customer and say, I can give you a 90% discount if you buy everything in our sales list. That salesperson makes his quota. The customer is a big hero because they got a 90% discount. Salesman never comes back. Oracle just ignores them after that. And that was the kind of behavior that was going on at Oracle. Some of the they were trying to produce products so quickly, they were shipping products that didn't work. So they hit a quarter in 1991 and missed that quarter, and customers didn't like us, products didn't work. Sybase and Informix had basically produced a better product, a programmable server. We did not have a programmable server. So when I came in, the betting odds were, oh, wait a minute, Larry just recruited a partner from Booz Allen. Okay, they didn't look at any, I was at IBM or EDS or from Booz Allen. So he's going to put a consultant in charge, it'd be COO and president of the company. This is 6 months. I give him 6 months. So nobody listened. Nobody just said, but we'll just ignore him. He'll be gone in 6 months. I mean, we'll get a new guy in. But nobody wants to screw with my comp plan or screw with my product setup. It was a very kind of inward-looking, competitive environment with a culture of win at any cost, that the ends justify the means. And so I said, oh, this is going to be tough. This is going to be how to change this. And so the first thing I did was I found, and I didn't go looking for this, but it was very fortunate. I found a person who was very senior, and he ran all of marketing that everybody hated in the organization. Everybody hated him. And he was protected by Larry. So he would tell you, yeah, Larry and I are good friends. We're spending weekends together, da, da, da. And everybody that reported to me said, this guy is just bad juju. So I brought him in the office 3 weeks after I started, and I said, you're fired. I told Larry I was going to fire him. I said, if he calls you, don't answer the phone, or I will be back at Booz Allen. And so that kind of, when that happened, he said, first of all, you can't fire me. You can't. I said, yes, I can. I'm looking at the organization chart. You report to me. He said, and so it happened, walked out that day, and that kind of sent a message through the company, there's a new sheriff in town. Larry is going to trust him to take action. Then I hired McKinsey. I didn't want a strategy. I wanted data because everybody told me that they had never lost to Sybase. I couldn't find one loss. Well, oh, by the way, they were growing at 60%. We were growing at 0. So I said, nobody's ever lost to Sybase. Nobody's ever lost to Informix. How is that possible? The numbers just don't work out. So McKinsey came in, spent 2 months just gathering the data. They had never seen data presented this way. To say, look, here is what your customers think of you. Here is where your losses are. Here's why you lost. They were staring, and the engineers were saying, oh my God, it's like, I didn't realize we were that far behind. The salespeople saying, they were blaming the engineers blaming the salespeople. Now they only could look at themselves. And then finally, there was a number of people just weren't going to change the ways. They're not going to change their ways. So just they had to go. That started, and then we built new processes. I took a team of 5 or 6 people, and we worked all night. I mean, like we would be for 6-8 months, just staying up all night, building new business practices so that we told the salespeople, told the engineers, told them, this is the way you will behave. This is what you will do. I remember the first customer I went to see was Merck, big pharmaceutical company. And he said, the CIO says, why are you here? He says, I'm never buying anything from Oracle again. I hate your company. You guys are thieves, And I said, look, why don't we start over? I said, can you have your contract brought in here? He brings in the contract where he had bought everything, and I tore it up. I said, we're just going to start over, okay? We'll earn your business now. He says, you're just tearing it up. He was like, I said, yes, you have no more obligations to Oracle, but we're going to start. He became one of our biggest customers. General Electric, the same thing. General Motors had never bought from Oracle. So it was the business practices of trying to teach people, play for the long term. These are customers that will be around today, tomorrow, forever. And you just cannot, as a sales team, go sell them everything and then disappear. So it worked. I knew in the third quarter I was there, I could feel it turning around. I could feel it. We also brought a new product to market. It was called Oracle 7. That was a keystone product for Oracle. Oracle 7.1 worked a lot better, but it changed the game against some of those competitors. And then I got the call about a year and a half, 2 years into it. I was in the UK, and I got a call from Larry, and he says, he was just laughing. And he said, it's over. It's over. And Sybase missed their quarter, and they never came back. Dead on arrival. And we saw it as a zero-sum game, winner take all. And so that was really, really an important event. So.
Yeah. And your leadership principles are very clear, genuine, authentic, and you've previously mentioned that 80% of a company's success is based on who's leading it and based on how their leadership transforms the company. So with that, I want to transition to your time now within VC. So imagine you've just been handed a pitch deck. Can you walk us through the mental model that you have once you're evaluating a company?
Yeah, if we get a pitch deck and anybody in the firm, if anybody in the firm is intrigued by it, then they start doing some homework, okay? But we have a framework that we lay over that in the beginning that says, okay, is this an interesting problem they're solving? That's number one. Is it a big enough problem they're solving? Does it have a market that is big enough to matter, that you could build $1 billion company here? And will customers pay for it? Does the entrepreneur have experience? Does the entrepreneur, can they tell the story in a compelling way in a very short period of time? Once you have someone presenting you 20 slides and saying, and they're obviously kind of, even though they invented the product, they should understand it. They should understand innately what problem and what solution and what the future looks like, how they will build it out, how it will be an important part of their customers' future. A lot of things we see are features. Someone at a company notices, so they work at IBM or they work at a smaller company. They notice that there's something not being served, a customer's not being served well by, something in Snowflake or Oracle or applications or whatever, and they say, I can solve that problem. So they recognize it. They go out and start a company. And then when more objective people look at it and say, okay, we're going to look at it through the lens of, is this big? Is it a big company? Is it a big opportunity? Is it a big market? Will people buy it? Already they've become, devoted to defending their idea. No, this will be big. I've now devoted a year to this. I put my own money into it. I have people I've hired, and they become defenders of that. And we like entrepreneurs that can pivot. A good entrepreneur can recognize both their strengths and weaknesses and can say, okay, if this is not going to work, they can typically, good entrepreneurs can typically start another business or run another business or pivot their business into something new. So Tom Siebel runs a company called C3, okay, .ai. That company started as a carbon accounting company. He thought in 2007 or 8 or 9, I can't remember what year it started, but Tom thought this whole green tech thing is going to be a big deal, and companies are having real problems kind of tracking their carbon supply chain. And so we'll become the carbon accounting, kind of an ERP system for carbon and knowing where it is in your supply chain. He pivoted that company 4 times to C3. I don't think the name changed. Maybe to put the .ai on it. But Tom is a great entrepreneur. And he knew that that was not going to work. I had funded a company that did exactly the same thing. Okay, I wasn't running it. There was an entrepreneur I backed. And my advice to that entrepreneur was give the investors the money back because it wasn't going to work. If I had had Tom in as CEO, I would have said pivot it to something else. But he pivoted the company 4 times, and now it's worth $5 billion. So what was your original question? I'm sorry.
Your mental model when evaluating a company.
Yeah, okay. So typically one of the partners in the network, our associates are kind of constantly combing the network, just looking for things. So we see something and we say, okay, it has some characteristics that we like. It has a good entrepreneur can tell a story. It has a big market. Maybe it has a customer or two. The product is defendable. In other words, the IP is defensible. I had something else, and it just went out of my mind. But there's a number of characteristics or framework that they'll use, or I'll use, to say, okay, does it meet that test? Because if it doesn't, and I'm looking at 2 of our guys right here, they go through hell because they develop, 2 or 3 weeks before we ever hear about it, they're developing a position about whether they think this company is a big deal to us. And then they'll have an initial discussion with us at a team meeting, which we do every Tuesday. And in the team meeting, everybody just is a skeptic. Everybody. I've never seen any company just fly through and say, oh my God, what an amazing idea. No, there's a lot of skeptics, a lot of questions they get. And so we just basically take all those questions, and that forms the basis for our diligence. We get into their data room. And it's probably from time we meet the company to time we invest. We would love 3 months. We don't always get it. There's always, especially in 2020 and 2021, it was always like, we got to invest tomorrow or we'll lose it. They're still seeing some of that in the AI area, but it's really, really tough to say if you can't do the diligence, can't talk to customers, can't talk to some of the engineers, and really understand whether you're going to, it's going to be something we're willing to bet on. Typically, we look at seed and Series A. So our perfect investment is we put $7 million into a Series A and reserve $7 million for the follow-on investment. That's what we like more than anything. We'll do small seeds just to kind of get in the company and follow them. We'll rarely do Bs, but we may do a B.
So you evaluate the company holistically, and not everything is clear-cut, hence the skepticism. So in terms of entrepreneurial journeys, we all know that it can be bumpy. It's not always just a clear path. Can you share about some times where some obstacles you faced or things that you just thought were going to go your way and didn't?
Well, the life of a venture capitalist, you didn't really limit it to venture capital, but the life of venture capital is you got to be willing to probably, of every investment, out of all the investments you make, 1 in 10 is going to be a big outcome. 1 in 100 of the ones you think you want to invest in. But the ones you actually invest in, you should produce a really good outcome in 1 out of 10. In another 3 or 4, a very good outcome. So that means that leaves half of them as they are going to return capital or get written off. Those are your odds, I just haven't seen them change in my 23 years in the business. It's just, you don't know at the beginning which one is going to be the big winner, right? You just don't know. So I'll give you one example. We had an entrepreneur who actually worked for me at Oracle. I didn't know him. He came in with a big idea. It was software to detect money laundering in financial services. This was in 2017, and it had elements of machine learning in it, where he would actually do, today, for banks find money laundering by hiring thousands and thousands of people to investigate special situation reports. I forget what, they're called SARS. So we suspect there is something going on here, and so they need people to manually go through that and check it out. He did this and proved the results, proved that that from all the pilots he did where they did it manually, he could produce the same results with not a human being touching it. I said, this is a big idea. This is $7 trillion of money laundering a year. This is a big idea. So we invested. And he was way ahead of the market. The regulatory hierarchy in the financial service would not allow, they wanted people to do this, not machines. Okay. Today, it probably would be a success. So what did I learn? I don't invest in businesses that have regulatory approval as a barrier. I don't invest in businesses that have government red tape. Okay, that basically, I had a chance to, really good chance to invest in Tesla. So I met Elon and I met the then CEO of Tesla, and this was a really controversial investment. A car, think about it, there hasn't been a new car company created in maybe 70 years. And so I walk in with a presentation, Elon Musk, and do the presentation to Kleiner Perkins for Tesla. Uh-huh. Half my partners said, "You have got to be kidding me." It's like we had veto rights. Each of us had a veto right. And everybody's like afraid to use a veto, but I knew they wanted to. And then a few others said, "Well, if you want to do this, Ray, go ahead." And I just said, this has big CapEx. This has regulatory problems, and it has half my partners against it. So decided not to do it. The valuation was $70 million. $70 million. Yeah. So, but that's a rare example of where Elon was smart enough to use government money early enough, spent it before Obama basically cut it off in 2012 when Romney was all over him, saying you're picking winners and losers with government money. And so so he got it all done soon enough, and he still had to invest everything he had. Elon was worth $350 million. He put it all into the company, and he still had to go to Daimler and borrow $50 million and give him all his battery technology. And that saved the company enough to start building it. It's an incredible story. So it's recognizing a good entrepreneur, recognizing the IP, recognizing the problem can get solved, is all a process that we go through. It always feels like a fire drill, always. I've never seen it not feel like a fire drill, and but we get it done, and we end up coming together as a team and making a bet. Would you guys say that our rejection rate is? So we invest in one out of how many that you say you get serious about in 1 week. Let's say not just the emails, but you see something, you're interested in it. 1 in 20. Yeah, I would have said 1 in 40. Yeah, yeah.
So on the line of like controversial investments or things that are in gray areas, are there any ethical dilemmas that you face, and how do you go about those gray situations?
Yeah, I've faced a couple of them. And I don't think it depends on the ethical dilemma, okay? It depends on maybe the size of the company, the culture of the company. But I kind of come down on the side that there's not much room for error on ethics. I can deal with a thief. I can't deal with a liar. You know, it's I can deal with maybe people that are racists, or they're they just don't have the right. But I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of good people. Well, let me back up. I'll start with one that is a good example. At Booz Allen, I had a partner working for me who ran the San Francisco office. He was building a really good practice. He actually represented 25% of my revenue for my practice. He was really important. We hired a partner to join him in San Francisco. He had actually supported that. When this partner joined, I eventually hired him at Oracle. When that partner joined, something went wrong. There was just something where the two of them did not get along, and there probably was, they both had the lead. They both wanted to drive the bus. And so the partner who was leading San Francisco called me and said, we made a mistake. We've got to fire Robert. I said, no, we can't. No, we're not going to do that. And I found out that he went around the horn. I mean, he literally was calling Robert's wife to say, you joined the wrong place. I'm going to make his life miserable. He was telling the staff that nobody should work with Robert. He was just like, he was going. So I had that. Now I had the dilemma. A senior partner running the San Francisco office, in a partnership, you should go to the board, executive committee, and get permission. I did not. I flew to San Francisco, I fired him, and then I went to the management committee, the executive committee, and I explained why I did it. It's just now, I just cut off my right arm because it's 25% of my revenue, okay? And he made it happen. He was a big bookings producer. But there's just no room for that, and eventually that practice grew back from each one of them. One of them, I think, truly didn't know he had done something wrong. The other one knew it, but I just think you will always feel better in the long term if you handle ethical problems with a strong action. Because you can always, the company, people lost money, but you can maybe change behavior in a few people. Most of the time, you're not going to be successful. So I just favor strong action on ethical issues. And if it's one of your best performers, act.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I believe that ethics and morals are usually a foundation. At the end of the day, is what you have, and is what you're leaning on. And it seems like your ethics and foundation is still going back to your leadership principles of being the most authentic, honest self. I do want to go back to what you were previously saying.
By the way, a lot of that came from growing up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I think I really believe that. If you're from, how many of you are from Pittsburgh? Oh, wow. It's not many. It's a a Midwest ethnic culture that we have in Pittsburgh, and people have a huge work ethic and just believe in being. And so I have always, when the media was all over me at Oracle or at HP, I would always trust telling the truth. Just simply tell the truth, and people will treat you right most of the time. It does not mean there are some great leaders who are not the most ethical people. Okay, so don't confuse with, you can be a leader, you can be a successful business person, and not be totally ethical, if you will. You know, but people will eventually make a choice to say, I can't work here anymore, I can't follow them anymore. So don't confuse it with lack of performance or lack of performance, but it's just, I just think it is the best way. Build it into your teams from the beginning, that you know your customers will appreciate it, your employees will appreciate it, that you are going to be the judge and jury on ethics.
Yeah, it goes back to this very famous saying, you are who you are when no one is looking, too. So going back to the startup that you were talking about with your previous Oracle employee who was working on avoiding tax fraud with technology, you mentioned how it'd be very different then versus now, how it would be perceived. So what do you think, and I'm asking because I'm an engineer at heart, but what do you think about the future of technology? Is there anything that you're excited for, nervous about? And one of the classes that I'm taking right now is talking about the growth of technology, and we called it creative destruction in one of the articles that we read. So I also wanted to hear your opinions on that.
Well, no one has a crystal ball. You know, you'll see a lot of people speak or write things about. I'm sorry to ignore. I'm looking over this way a lot, I know, and sorry to do that. But no one has a crystal ball. I've invested in virtual reality. I'm still waiting. Okay. We've been looking at quantum mechanics and companies that are doing things in hardware and software. So, you know, it's hard to predict market timing, really hard to predict it. We are obviously excited about everything going on in artificial intelligence and machine learning right now, but it's kind of gone the other way, right? It's every company, no matter what they do, you know, food companies, basically say .ai. I'm an artificial intelligence. It's because of artificial intelligence, food tastes so good. I'm serious too. I've seen that company, and so so everything has gone. And so we have to have a really good microscope to try to examine. Okay, what is the real value proposition here? Will it really add value? Will it really do something for a customer? Will they really pay for it? And why is the artificial intelligence making it happen? We've got a company that I invested in early 2016, late 2015, called Kinetica, which is a database company. This was a project team that was working for the DoD. And they couldn't find a commercial database that was fast enough to process all the data. They couldn't ingest it fast enough. They couldn't analyze it fast enough. So they decided to build a new database on GPUs. This is in 2012, 2013, 2014. It's a brilliant idea, right, on GPUs, because GPUs were used for video games. Prior to that, NVIDIA, people hadn't heard of NVIDIA. So they basically used NVIDIA chips and they obviously had processors from Dell or wherever they got the hardware, but they basically built a database that was 10 times faster than anything on the planet and used 1/10 of the resources. And still it was hard to explain to everybody. Snowflake had just started and Snowflake was growing and Databricks was on its way. But this company now has all the enterprise features necessary to now add new features like vector search for AI. And we expect it to be just huge. We expect it to be really, really big. So we spend a lot of time in AI and machine learning. We spend a lot of time in the healthcare market. So the U.S. healthcare market, from the delivering care, new technologies, all the way through to payments, is really, really screwed up. I mean, it is a sitting duck for entrepreneurs to attack it and provide more efficiency, more efficacy to the market. So we have done, I bet we're probably now 50% in the healthcare market. Now we're careful that we don't invest in new pharmaceuticals. I mean, we have one or two companies that are deep life science. You can't afford to do many of those. So most of these companies are kind of working at the seams of provider, payer, and patient, and making that whole process much more efficient. And that is I think that's going to be, and then bring artificial intelligence in it, and machine learning in it. That's going to be a big, big market for a long time.
Yeah, I know I want to continue picking your brain, but we have time for about one or two audience questions.
Wait, let me creative destruction. You said creative destruction.
Yeah, creative destruction.
So creative destruction, I think about, I'm not sure what the context is in when you raised it in a class.
In the growth of technology.
So the term has been around for decades, actually. And creative destruction really means that you're going to increase productivity. Okay, so you're going to make something better, which means lower the cost and increase the yield. Okay, and the computer industry has done that. I've been in this industry since the early 70s. At IBM, in 1971, 1 megabyte of memory was $1 million. That's how much a customer would pay. And then in the mid-70s and close to the end of the 70s is when Amdahl, Memorex started saying, wait, there's a better way to do this, because of Moore's Law. And Moore's Law just continued to change the equation every single year. It's the only industry on the planet that has doubled productivity every 18 months. And so now, if you get on the other side of that equation and say, okay, I'm not going to let it, I've already got the best answer. I've got the best ERP system. I've got the best database, and no one's going to challenge. You're rife to go down, because the technology development, and as you look ahead, you might think that everything could be developed has been developed. And it's just not true. So from the time that, you go back hundreds and hundreds of years, right? The car, the automobile, right? Everybody fought it. Said, no, why would anybody use a stupid thing like that when you got horses? Planes, computer technology. That is creative destruction. And so people have to step back, say, okay, if I implemented something like that, things would go faster, things would get more efficient, things would go down in cost, but never develop a company that doesn't have a value proposition that someone sees and says, I will pay money for that. I'll pay a lot of money for that. There has to be a practical solution to a problem. The bigger the problem, the better. But there has to be, because if you're kind of like the company I mentioned, flailing away at anti-money laundering when nobody's buying it, you're not going to get funded. So.
Yeah, we also talked about the impact of Moore's Law in class too. But I do want to leave time for some audience questions. So we have a couple people with mics, and you can choose on someone.
Coleman's walking very
Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for this session. And what I'd like to know is, what do you look for in a founder when you're investing, given that you just mentioned that one founder cannot take a startup through all 4 stages, that is 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and then 100 to 1,000. So what are the characteristics that you look for in a founder when you're wanting to invest?
So I think there's several things. I think the first thing is a clear definition of the idea, okay? Here is my idea. Here is why I think it will work. Here is the problem that is going to get solved, and here's how much somebody will pay for that. If you can't do that in 5 minutes, you're not an entrepreneur, okay? Now, you may be a smart person. Everybody, I assume, at Carnegie Mellon is smart, okay? But not everybody is an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur, okay? I have a partner who is a serial entrepreneur. 2 of them. But I can't claim in my background. I ran big companies. I started one company. It made it 3 or 4 years, and yeah, we sold it. So it wasn't a huge success. But it's a lonely job, lonely thing to do. You have to create that vision every day for other people. They go home, they have lives. So you have to bring that vision, that clear definition of the problem. 80% of your time should be defining the problem, understanding the problem. What would the world be like if the problem didn't exist? Even before you get to the solution. How will that go into the market, and why would the market scale it? Why would the market grow it? If you're going to the enterprise, so if I sell something to the enterprise for $50,000 a year, that's not a big deal. Okay, so how is it going to grow in the enterprise? How will it expand? Being a great leader, okay? An entrepreneur, first of all, if you, and you all are, smart enough to identify a problem and come up with a solution, you aren't yet an entrepreneur and you aren't yet a leader. So think about those 2 things. What makes an entrepreneur? Okay, it's a combination of the things I already mentioned. The ability to, if it's not working, to pivot. It is to hire the right people. It is to communicate to them clearly. And it is execute every day. Okay? Leadership is about trust. People have to trust you in a small company. So they have to come to work and feel like I'm putting myself on the line, my family on the line for you. Yeah, for ourselves too, but and it isn't so much personal trust. It is trust in the direction you're taking me. Okay? So you could actually not trust the person you work for personally. It sounds weird as the entrepreneur. I mean, I mentioned Tom Siebel. There's a lot of people that work for Tom Siebel that don't trust Tom Siebel, don't, but he's a great leader. They trust where he's going. And he's a very tough guy to work for. So, because he says, this is what I want. It's very clear. You're not delivering it. Okay? And so that's kind of, how it works. Anyway, what was your original question? Your original question was, because I think I left it.
How do you pick a founder when, through 4 stages of, a growth of a company?
Yeah. So I think you have to when you leave Carnegie Mellon, just assume you're. I don't know if Dave's going to agree with me on this, but assume you're not an entrepreneur. Okay. We debated for a long time. Dave's predecessor, Art Bonney, we debated a long time. Can we teach entrepreneurship? And I took the side back then when we created the Silicon Valley campus that entrepreneurs are born, not made. I'm not sure I agree with that anymore. But someone who thinks they're an entrepreneur that doesn't continue to learn what great entrepreneurs do, how they think, lead, pivoting, smart ideas. When an entrepreneur has a smart idea, don't produce a company with a dumb idea, okay? I've been in this business 23 years. Every idea kind of sounds smart to me. I've heard 1,000 of them, but they don't necessarily lead to a good company. So think about it. Before you wrap yourself around it, take the smart idea, make sure it becomes a smart company, that you can build a company around it, that people will see it as that. Anyway, that's okay.
Would you like to choose someone? You probably have time for one or two more.
I've not been fair over here. You said one more? How about I do two more? Okay, back there, your hand up. No, there was a guy behind you with a hand up first. Okay, and then if you have a mic, you can go now, okay?
Doing well. I'm Ayush Sanotia. I started a company in edtech sector. I ran it for 1.5 years. Then I embarked on pursuing my journey of masters in information security from CMU. I have a personal question from you, Ray. So at this present stage, till 31, I want to have a good company. Like I want to run a good company with a decent stand. And as of now, I'm pursuing my master's in information security, and sometimes I get scared that am I too late to jump on the train of entrepreneurship? So what do you think I can do right now? What are the skills that I can learn or the habits that I can build, which will help me to increase the probability of getting successful in the aim?
Well, I think it's basically the same question that was just asked. I'm not sure. I couldn't hear. Are all plugged up. But the skills, do you have a mentor?
I don't right now.
Yeah, I really recommend. I had a mentor at every stage and sometimes didn't even know it. But when I joined IBM, I had a mentor that I just worshiped. He spent the time with me and taught me a lot of basic things that I still use today. And at Booz Allen, and even though I don't consider Larry Ellison a mentor or Ross Perot a mentor, I worked directly for them. And I observed them because they didn't know how to teach. They knew how to do. And so I watched them. I watched carefully how they made decisions and how they... So find people that have been successful and say, okay, I'd love to have a mentoring relationship that can basically help you with some of the skills development. Hiring is probably the most important thing. Hiring and fundraising are probably the most important thing. So everybody, I assume that everybody in this room is very, very smart, and you might even think is a candidate to help you build your company. Okay, right? They were educated at Carnegie Mellon, masters. I mean, how can you can't top that. So you have to develop your framework for what works in your company. Okay, it's not just smart. It is, you're going to build a culture. So figure out how to do an interview. Probably the poorest skill I've seen in business in my many, many decades is recruiting, hiring. People are terrible recruiters. 1 in 50 is a good recruiter. So I'd say the number one skill to learn is recruiting.
How should I learn that now?
You don't teach recruiting here? So find people that are good recruiters. Sit them down and say, what do you look for in an interview, right? I don't know how many interviews you have attended on either side where somebody says to you, okay, well, tell me about your background. Okay, tell me where you started life, tell me where, your education, and they're basically wasting time looking at everything that's on a piece of paper because they have your paper, they have your resume, right? No, you are looking for someone to do a job, okay, or to help you with something. Maybe it's a partner. And so be really, really clear about what you're looking for. And, I can't tell you, so many people are just kind of lazy about doing that. Test it. Go over it again and again and again. Are you married?
No, I'm not married.
You better think about this when you get married too.
Yeah.
So challenge people to a problem. Okay, so don't just hire them because their resume looks good. Say, okay, I've got a problem here. I've got a real problem here at the company. I want you to help me solve it. And give them an exercise. And challenge them and say, come back tomorrow. Okay, but once you hire, now you can certainly correct the mistake by terminating but it's costly. Right. So that to me is the number one skill. The second one I think is fundraising. Learning how to make a pitch that gets people with money excited. Okay, they're not going to get excited about your idea. They're going to get excited about you and the way you explain the idea and the way you are going to take it to market.
Right.
So be excited. You've heard about the elevator pitch, right? In 3 minutes on an elevator, it's pretty true. So you get my ear in the first 5 minutes. Okay, what is going to make this work? So those two skills, I think, are the most important for an entrepreneur that wants to build a company. So if you want to build a company, you've got to be able to hire a great team. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be able to raise money for that company. Those are the two things.
Okay. So do you think it would be a good idea to have a bunch of friends and then apply both those things that you said, like interviewing with each other, like giving interviews and taking interviews with your friends and doing elevator pitches?
I think you could practice anything, absolutely. So obviously there are people, let's use golf or baseball as an example. There are people who just are natural athletes that maybe can fake it and say, they can go in and do something, swing a golf club and actually hit the ball. But most people have to practice. Most people have to kind of be taught and practice. So sure, could you take a group of colleagues and could you say, okay, here's going to be my interviewing technique. So you try it out, okay, and say, okay, there's going to be no more than 5 minutes of telling me, what you did when you were 6 years old and what schools you went to. So here's what we do here. We have a real problem that we're trying to solve. Even if the problem is made up, and challenge them to see how they can think on their feet, see how they can respond to a problem, see how they can, but develop your framework for doing that. But you could do that with colleagues, absolutely. Two more.
We've got some folks over here.
Someone over here.
Hi, I'm Sherry. Thank you so much for your time today. My question is, you kind of mentioned upon ethics, and I'm curious about your thoughts. Do you think currently, the VC and startup world and culture right now cares about ethics amongst the founders and companies and products that they're investing in? And if so, can you give an example? And if not, do you think that they will care in the future? Thank you.
It's a lot of ground to cover with saying all venture capitalists, okay? So I would say certainly I think there's a lot of attention to ethics today. In most venture capital companies, okay? I think when things were getting out of hand in 2019, 2020, 21, you read stories about parties, and it's not the top tier firms. It's just not. There was just too much money in the market, and so venture capital firms were being formed without anybody understanding what the business was. It's a real business. It's a real business that has a real process behind it, and most of the people that are in it have had experience in business and care about. When we had this situation that I described about the people that went to Hawaii, when I described it to all of my co-investors, there was immediate disgust, immediate kind of say, don't care if we lose money, let's just end this. I mean, there was a test for it. So don't confuse it with kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all of that. I mean, it's your job is as an entrepreneur is to build teams and perform. Okay, and so if anything gets in the way of that, okay, then it's a problem. At Oracle, half my team was women because they performed better. They were just, when I was chairman of Carnegie Mellon in 2009, 2015, Jerry Cohen and I decided we need to increase the female population in SCS. It's now 51%. It's still number one in reputation. So ethics to me are about doing what is right, not doing what wins, doing what is popular, doing what the other, and you enforce it as a principle, as an ideal. And you have to have a mindset that you don't care what the penalty is. That's the key. You don't care what the penalty is, because if you endorse bad ethics, the penalty will be much larger in the future. Again, don't confuse it with performance. Okay? It's just, do you want somebody on your team that's just not ethical? Ethics covers a lot of things, right? And I think most people have built in them the way mom and dad did that, right? Or somewhere in school, built into you what is right to do. Okay? So why do you do something wrong? Why do you do it? Why should you tolerate it the other way? And people will take advantage. The bigger the company, people will take advantage. And that's when you have ethical dilemmas. That's when you have them. So, yeah, right here. I love this, Dave, so I know what I'm, who. Okay, all right, okay. Go ahead, back there, if you have a mic. Whoever has a mic, go.
Hi, thank you for sharing. My name is Jason. So I'm currently building an AI tool for online learning, and I'm curious about your point of view on the edtech industry, because I noticed...
Editing industry?
Edtech, educational technology.
Edtech, okay.
Yeah, because I noticed from the website that most of the companies you invested in the biotech industry and consumption. So yeah, kind of curious about your point of view on that.
I don't like EdTech. Yeah, I just, it's a funding issue. GovTech and EdTech are just tough cycles. It's specialized. You have to be. It's not an industry that is just, flowing with money like the commercial enterprises are, like healthcare is, and it's tough. Now, it works. I mean, Workday grew a lot of its business in ed tech, but it's a very, very tough business, I think. You guys agree with me, or? Yeah. Come on. What's that? Chegg, yeah, Chegg. He did really well for a long period of time, but yeah, it's had problems lately. So it's a tough industry. Not saying you can't make it. Chegg was worth a lot of money. Yeah. Anybody has a mic?
Hi. I was just wondering, so you talked about the fact that you don't invest in sectors that are heavily regulated. But at the same time, you said that half of your investments are in healthcare, which is, I believe, a heavily regulated sector. So how would you explain that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of healthcare that you can invest in without worrying about regulations, okay? So there's a lot, but yes, if you invent a drug or a process that you have to get FDA approval or you have to get insurance approval, sure, absolutely. But there's a lot that goes on outside that process that you can do. Give me an example, guys, of revenue cycle management. Okay, so for okay. Yeah, all claims for coding and all that. Yeah, so there's a lot. If you take a look at our website, you'll see a number, and you don't see a lot that are going to be heavily regulated. There's a few, yeah. And I certainly would never depend upon government funding again. I did it once, and will never do it again. Yeah, where the government says, we'll invest with you. No. Okay.
Ray's been so kind. I'm sure he'll stay around and answer. If you have a burning question that you need to get to him, he'll stay around. And then if you want to get to